And it's truly a badge of honor to have this be your intro music. And so it is for CBS Sports' own Dennis Dodd, who joins us right now on the Patrick Netherton Show. A good friend, an old friend, and Dennis, look, you've received numerous awards. You've had obviously a lot of great praise thrown your way. You've had a lot of great things happen in your time. Where does being the recipient of Lover Boys Working for the Weekend on the Patrick Netherton Show rank?
You had me at Lover Boy Working for the Weekend. It's not alliteration, but Throwback Friday. And then all of a sudden, I cannot unsee Patrick Swayze and Chris Farley in that Saturday Night Live.
Yes.
I'm just laughing my head off.
Yeah, well, I mean, look, I've said once that sketch came out, Working for the Weekend always brings that back to mind. It's now stuck in my head when we hear Working for the Weekend and Rogers plays it every Friday. That's all I can think about is Patrick Swayze and Chris Farley doing the Chippendales audition.
Absolutely.
Oh, one of the classics of all time. Hey, Dennis, before we get into all of the column that you wrote and all the other stuff going on around the NCAA and college sports, how are you? How's the family? How's everyone doing?
Oh, thank you, Patrick. Great. My wife and I just hunkered down here in our new home, put a patio in. Great weather today. Couldn't be better right now. Just waiting for some ball. Hope we play some ball.
Yeah, that certainly is the case. So before we kind of get into the nuts and bolts of what you were talking about in your column, let's sort of discuss some of the things that are going on. The NCAA's put out their comprehensive plan to get everyone back. Get the athletes back into training, back on the campuses, that kind of thing. And then sort of, I guess, at the same time, the Power Five, or as they call themselves, the Autonomous Five, sent a letter to Congress basically saying, hey, the NCAA ain't going to help us. Y'all need to get this straight with the names, images, and likenesses. Are we starting to see, this is, to me, sort of evidence of what your column was about the Power Five wanting to break away, the NCAA trying its best to put down rules and regulations to help their schools, but at the same time, the schools, especially the Power Five, basically saying, look, we need to go above and beyond you guys.
I think that's exactly what it is. When I saw that, I said they're going over the head of the NCAA and screw the legislative process. It may or may not work out by next January. The real deadline for this is next July 1st, Patrick. That's when the Florida NIL law goes online, and whatever's going to happen with NIL has to beat that date, because Florida is an example of the other. I think there's 33 states consider or have NIL laws. They're much more liberal than what the NCAA has proposed that we know about. The NCAA doesn't want to go to that point. They're fighting trench warfare or skirmish battles state by state. And I think the group, Autonomous Five, for wrong, right or wrong, are being proactive. And that's a word you almost never hear with the NCAA. They're asking Congress for help now because they know it's getting worse by the day, Patrick.
Yeah.
A presidential election, a pandemic, there's not even any noticeable proof that there's enough political will even to take this on. Forget about whether it's passed or not. I mean, I've said in the past, there's about 50 congressmen, I think, that really know this. Maybe less than that have bias. So that's what they're going for right now.
Talking to Dennis Dodd from CBS. So my major question, I guess my major issue with, and if you haven't seen it, it's on CBSSports.com. You can follow Dennis, if you like, as well, at Dennis Dodd CBS. I guess my major issue is not in that the Power Five or the Autonomous Five could handle football, because I think they could. I think it then rolls down to
have.
Yeah, and that right, and
it's
the NCAA
happening
doesn't,
right now.
Right,
Yeah.
the NCAA doesn't really have anything to do with college football at the Division I level, at the FBS level. But I wonder if you make that full move to extricate yourself out of the NCAA, what happens with soccer, volleyball, track and field, all the 80 championships the NCAA puts on? What happens with the basketball tournament, which is a huge moneymaker for the universities? I feel like It's one thing to say, hey, we can handle football, and we've been handling football, but now we're going to break away and start going into governance and championships of all these other sports, and I'm not sure they're ready for that.
Yeah, look, as I said, we're already halfway there with football. The college football playoff is an LLC that has a business arrangement deal with 130 schools and FBS and ESPN. That's a business deal. The NCAA does play, practice rules, recruiting, blah, 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 whatever. If they break away, they could easily do a basketball tournament. As I point out in the story, I think the Power Five's brand is stronger than the NCAA. They can go get their own corporate sponsors. If you put the NCAA and the IRS on a sheet of paper, which one has the worst brand recognition?
Right.
It's about a tie for last place. So let's talk. Let's talk about who has the upper hand here. It's the Power Five. As far as the minor sports, look, they would choose to fund them as they see fit. I think we're headed there right now. The Group of Five sent that letter to Mark Emmert asking for a 4-year relaxation on the sports sponsorship minimum, which is 16 sports. You got to have at least that many. Kind of arbitrary to me. It's never been explained.
Right.
So they would just make their own rules and say, okay, you only have to have 15, or you could, except for men's and women's basketball and football, everything else is club. I think those are details at that point. The fact is they could run their own deal. The stumbling block is that we're talking about 5 conferences that can't even decide how many conference games they play.
Mm-hmm.
They can't even decide on that. It's something simple as that. So can they do it by themselves? Yeah, I think I made this example this week. If an Apple came by and all of a sudden they want to get into college sports, that will give you $1 billion for your rights. That would work. They got their own. They got their own sponsor. Call it the Apple Playoff, whatever you want. They completely outbid ESPN, or they just buy whatever the Power Five is. I'm surprised they haven't trademarked themselves yet, but it could be done.
Yeah, and the thing that I keep looking at is with the egos in the room, Dennis, and that's every one of these Power Five commissioners thinks they're the most powerful guy in college athletics. Let's be honest. Yep. We all probably agree that it's maybe Sankey and maybe some of the Big Ten, but they all think they're the most powerful guy in there. Is there an ability for them to set aside ego enough that they could actually come together and agree on things that would then allow them to break away?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. I can't answer that. I actually think that letter today was significant in answering it. If they're united on that, on asking Congress for, to me, what I read is not just an antitrust exemption. They want a federal bill to oversee name, image, and likeness. Again, for better or worse. I don't know how that would work out. The NCAA, until about December, in their entire history, stiff-armed the federal government, said, no, stay out of our business, until they realized this is their last lifeline towards legitimacy, because name, image, and likeness professionalizes athletes. Not all of them, but it breaks through that barrier of the collegiate model, which they so doggedly defend. A Trevor Lawrence would be worth upwards of past $1 million. I happen to think that's okay. That doesn't keep people from coming to the games. That doesn't make Clemson any more dominant than they are now, because they are dominant. It doesn't keep Alabama from getting the best players. It doesn't keep Toledo from getting the worst players. I just think it is. I'm to the point in my life where I don't care. They got to figure out the recruiting piece, and that's what they've asked Congress to do. The problem, Patrick, is be careful what you wish for.
Mm-hmm.
If they can't figure it out, if the Power Five in college athletics can't figure out how to get through the recruiting piece, you better watch your steps if you're asking Congress to do it. They're uneducated on this subject.
I did enjoy someone I think mentioned that if this happens, well then the Group of Five just basically becomes the 1AA. And my response to that was, haven't you been paying attention? The Group of Five already is 1AA.
Yeah.
I find it amusing and somewhat scary, I think, Dennis, that people don't seem to understand that the Power Five has been separating itself from the rest of college athletics. And they've been doing it now for years, ever really since the inception of the college football playoff. They've been stacking the money more in their favor, all the television deals, all the money coming out of the playoff.
Yep.
You know, the Access Bowl is what I've always considered hush money to the group of five. You know, take your little couple $1 million and go run along and, you know, and stay out of the, you know, away from the adults. I find it amusing that people don't really seem to get that these fans at, you know, the Louisiana Techs and the Western Kentuckys and the UCFs and whatever, you're already second-class citizens to these guys.
Yeah, you're just getting paid enough money to survive. And we know at, you know, say the Sun Belt level or even Conference USA, some of those schools are playing football just to play football.
Mm-hmm.
In other words, they're taking those guarantee games just so they can fill the coffers for the next year. You know, I always use the example of Mexico State. There are others, and they're independent. But yeah, and don't think the Power Five, if it came to that, would cut them loose. I mean, it would be a heartless separation. They could have their own playoff. This happened in 1978, as you might remember it.
Yeah, it was
Division One. This happened. This happened with Division One, where the same things bubbled up. Or so, we're the stakeholders said we produce most of the money, most of the TV revenue. We want our own division. Okay, so it was posited to what became then 1AA. Hey, you could have your own playoff. The TV money's going to be great. Well, they got their own playoff, but the TV money was minimal, and they became second-class citizens really, really quick. Again, for better or worse. But it's in the piece. I kind of say, don't think of it as 65 pulling away those Power Five plus Notre Dame. I've always said I think it'd be about 90 or 100. You know, they have to play somebody. In other words, you can't have 32 winners and 32 losers every Saturday. In fact, with the College Football Association back in the 80s, I think that was 93 schools at the time. I'm not sure. I think it was 93. So you bring in the American, make Mountain West, and and make the cutoff schools that really, put a lot into football. Mm-hmm. Some of those schools do, and so you have a legitimate division.
Well, I keep saying, we especially remember Saban was big on the, we should all be playing a 9-game schedule, but we should all be playing Division Ones. You know, the Big Ten. Yeah. We're not playing FCS anymore. And when they kept talking about that, we should all be playing Power 5 opponents and, at the top level. And I kept thinking there's a lot of coaches who are going to go from 6-5 and, hey, we went to a bowl game to 3-9 and, oh, well, never mind. We're fired. I kind of think that a lot of people are talking about, hey, let's improve the strength of schedule. Let's get the FCSs off of the schedule. But then they're not going to be real happy when their coach goes 4-8 instead of 6-6 or 7-5.
Yeah, no. Alabama, Nick Saban can do that because he can.
Sure,
he can play a Power 5 schedule. There's a few more that can do it. Vanderbilt has to go to a bowl game, and I'm just using them as an example. They need to schedule for a bowl game. Missouri, I don't know. There's more, so that's a little bit out there. And I think even if you had this breakaway, they'd have to play somebody. Look, I'm not saying they wouldn't play the MAC schools or the Sun Belt schools. What I'm saying is they'd have their own, association. They'd be getting 100% of the playoff money instead of just 80%. If they did a basketball tournament, they'd get all that. I'll tell you what really spurred this years ago. Really got to talking about it, and this really made a lot of athletic directors mad when they started to play for units in the basketball tournament.
Mm-hmm.
And, Duke made a lot of money because it advanced every year, but it was playing for equal units to everybody in the ACC.
Right.
Instead of the Baylor. Okay, I'll use the example of Baylor. Baylor got $6 million for playing in the Cotton Bowl last year because they have a deal with the Cotton Bowl and the CFP. Here's $6 million. And it went into the Big 12 trough, but you know what I'm talking about. Mm-hmm. They would love to take hold of that basketball tournament and give not shares, but give, I don't know what the term is, for appearance money, whatever you call it.
Right.
But the stakeholders, Kansas, Duke, Kentucky, would get more at the top than the other schools.
Yeah, I just, as a bit of a basketball purist, it worries me. One of the best moments in Northwestern State history is beating Iowa in 2006 with a 14-3 matchup, and that goes away. if the Power Five break off and start their own basketball tournament, you don't have Cinderellas anymore. That just vanishes.
Right.
And that, that's bothersome. To me, that's a lot of the tradition and a lot of the great aspect of college sports, especially once you get past football, Dennis, the idea that everyone is kind of on a level playing field, right? We saw Coastal Carolina win a baseball championship, Stony Brook.
Yeah.
You see College World Series. They can, some other teams can get in there and prosper. ULL, Louisiana Lafayette can do that. That's what worries me. It's not the idea that the football is so lopsided, because it is and it will continue to be. It's the idea that, well, now you've lost your chance at all of these other championships against the big boys where you have so much more of a level playing field.
It really hit home for me when the basketball tournament was canceled.
Mm-hmm.
As big as that was, and it was huge, it's only a fraction of what they get in football.
Yeah.
What was it? A $4 billion industry, or what the Washington University study commissioned by ESPN. And look what that did. And I don't want to minimize it, but look what just that did. It brought college athletics to its knees.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody's cutting. Everybody's trimming back. You're going to see, I'm just predicting, you're going to see the virtual end of these outrageous buyouts, because they just won't give them, because all the schools just won't give them anymore. You're talking about schedules where you can bust a game. I'm talking about it, not only the bottom levels, but everybody's thinking about that. That's actually a directive now in FCS for football. Montana's not too happy about it. There's no teams around them. But Furman could do it. Don't get on a plane anymore. So it's just that kicked college athletics right in the teeth. So if there's any upheaval in football, and we already know there virtually will be.
Mm-hmm.
The 10 conferences, the commissioners have told us basically the 10 conferences are going to take off. Whoever's in is in. We don't care. And within those conferences, we don't care if all the teams play. In fact, we don't even care if all the teams play 12 games. I mean, that's what they've modeled. Whoever wants to go can go, and let the college football playoff committee figure it out at the end of the season.
Yeah, it's look, there's a lot that's going to happen. I was actually texting with a friend of mine who was saying that some economists that he talked to said this could be a very real issue with higher education in general. A lot of schools that and I said, look, haven't we reached sort of a bloating point here where we probably need some contraction in higher education, where there's too many schools that are out there, that we could see some of this go down? And with the ability now to go to remote learning, this, now we've shown that we can do it. Now this becomes a whole different ballgame when it comes to the higher athletic, higher academic, higher education in general. So I think it's going to be fascinating to watch. And obviously, Dennis, I know you'll be on top of it. And as things progress, we'll keep having you on to chat with everything, man.
Patrick, I appreciate it. Thank you.
You got it. Stay safe out there. Dennis Dodd, CBS Sports.